I didn't know my gut was in trouble until it was. I remember the day it hit me, not all at once, but gradually, like an itch I couldn't quite scratch. It wasn't pain at first. It was a slow, creeping discomfort, a tightness in my stomach after meals, a constant bloated feeling I had chalked up to just getting older. Sometimes I'd wake up tired even though I slept fine. Other days, I'd forget simple things, where I put my glasses, what I walked into the kitchen for at 67. I told myself this was just part of aging. But I had a gut feeling, pun intended, that something deeper was going on. That maybe, just maybe, the very foods I'd been eating for decades were no longer serving me. In fact, they were hurting me. Let me take you back a bit. For most of my adult life, I thought I was eating relatively well. Cereal for breakfast, a sandwich at lunch, pasta or meat and potatoes for dinner. It was the kind of normal diet most people around me had, too. Nothing outrageous, nothing fried every day. But it turns out it's not always the obvious junk food that does the damage. It's the everyday stuff, the ones that slip under the radar. I didn't know what gut health really meant. It was just a term I heard younger folks talk about in blogs or wellness shows. I figured it had something to do with digestion. What I didn't realize is that your gut, your digestive tract, is deeply connected to almost everything else in your body. Your brain, your mood, your immune system, even how well you sleep at night. The first real wake-up call came when I was on a family trip. I was out of town with my grandkids and we were enjoying a typical vacation breakfast. Toast, eggs, bacon, coffee. Within an hour, I felt like someone had inflated a balloon inside my belly. I couldn't sit comfortably. I felt foggy and sluggish. My daughter noticed and asked if I was okay. I laughed it off, but deep down I was worried. That night, as I lay in bed feeling like my insides were churning, I pulled out my phone and started reading. Signs of poor gut health. Foods that cause inflammation in seniors. I was shocked. So many of the foods I had every day, white bread, dairy, processed meats, even that glass of orange juice in the morning, were on the list of gut offenders. It felt like I had unknowingly been sabotaging my own body for years. I'll never forget the article that said, "Your gut is your second brain." That phrase stuck with me. Because the truth is, I wasn't just dealing with bloating or gas. I was moody. I was anxious more often. I couldn't focus like I used to, and I had no idea it was all possibly connected to the state of my gut. But the worst part? I had ignored the early warning signs for years. Small signs, like heartburn after dinner, that nagging constipation every few days, even the dark circles under my eyes that no amount of sleep could fix. These were all clues, but because they didn't seem serious, I brushed them off. I never thought food, harmless food, could be the silent villain behind it all. Looking back, I realize I needed to go through that discomfort to open my eyes, to learn that just because something has been in your pantry for 30 years doesn't mean it still belongs in your life. Our bodies change. Our digestive systems become more sensitive. What worked in your 30s might wreak havoc in your 60s and beyond. The good news is, once I acknowledged that my gut was in trouble, I could do something about it. I could start learning, experimenting, and healing. In the sections that follow, I'll tell you exactly which foods shocked me, the ones that were quietly damaging my gut without me knowing. I'll also show you the symptoms I started taking seriously and how I gradually removed harmful foods and rebuilt a healthier routine, one that's helped me feel lighter, clearer, and even younger. If you're in your 60s, 70s, or beyond, and you're feeling off, maybe it's your energy, your digestion, or your mood, please don't ignore it. Don't write it off as just aging. Sometimes it's not your age. Sometimes it's your gut crying for help. And trust me, I didn't know my gut was in trouble until it was. The everyday foods that secretly wrecked my digestion. When I finally started paying attention to what might be causing all the discomfort in my belly, I didn't begin with anything extreme. I didn't throw out everything in my kitchen or start drinking green juices. I started with observation. I kept a small notebook, nothing fancy, and began jotting down what I ate and how I felt afterward. That simple act opened my eyes more than any doctor visit ever had. What I found shocked me. The foods that were upsetting my gut weren't just deep-fried junk or fast food. In fact, some of them were foods I had eaten my whole life, believing they were healthy, or at least harmless. But over time, especially as I aged, my body stopped tolerating them the way it used to. My gut, in its quiet way, was telling me it had had enough. Let me walk you through some of these surprising offenders. You might be eating them right now, not realizing they're slowly throwing your digestive system off balance. White bread and refined carbs. Bread. My faithful companion for over 6 decades. Toast in the morning, sandwiches at lunch, a roll with dinner. But it turns out that white bread, and really anything made with refined flour, was causing chaos in my gut. Refined carbs lack fiber. And as we age, our digestion slows down naturally. Fiber becomes essential to keeping things moving and feeding the good bacteria in our gut. Without it, we not only become constipated, but we also starve our microbiome, the trillions of microbes that keep our immune system, brain, and digestion functioning properly. Worse still, these refined carbs break down into sugar quickly, spiking blood sugar and feeding bad bacteria. The result? Bloating, cramping, sluggishness, a gut that feels inflamed from the inside out. Artificial sweeteners. This one really surprised me. I had switched to sugar-free drinks years ago, thinking I was making a smart move. 0 calories, the label said. What could go wrong? Plenty, it turns out. Sweeteners like aspartame, sucralose, and saccharin don't get digested like natural sugars. Instead, they pass through the gut and interfere with the bacteria living there. Studies have shown they can reduce the diversity of gut bacteria and actually cause glucose intolerance, which increases the risk of type 2 diabetes. I realized every diet soda I drank was upsetting the delicate balance in my gut. Dairy. Products. Now this one hit close to home. I grew up drinking milk. Cheese was a daily thing. But I started to notice that after I had milk with my cereal or indulged in a cheesy snack, I felt bloated, gassy, and uncomfortable. Turns out many older adults develop lactose intolerance gradually. The body stops producing enough lactase, the enzyme needed to digest lactose in dairy. Even if you had no problem with milk in your younger years, that can change. It did for me. Cutting back on dairy was one of the hardest but most rewarding decisions I made. My stomach felt calmer, lighter, and I wasn't dealing with that constant bloating anymore. Processed meats, hot dogs, sausages, deli meats, these were easy to toss into a sandwich or enjoy at a barbecue. But the more I read, the more I realized they were a hidden danger. These meats often contain nitrates, preservatives, and additives that can disrupt gut bacteria and increase inflammation. And because they're low in fiber and often high in fat and salt, they're a double whammy for digestion. I still enjoy a good meal, don't get me wrong. But I've swapped out deli meats for grilled chicken or plant-based proteins, and my gut thanks me every time. Fried foods. Now, I didn't eat fried chicken every day, but I certainly enjoyed it once in a while. And I thought that once in a while couldn't hurt. But I started to notice a pattern. Every time I had something fried, whether it was fries, a donut, or even fried fish, I felt sluggish and bloated for the rest of the day. Fried foods are harder to digest, and they're often cooked in oils that cause inflammation in the body. For someone like me in their late 60s, the digestive system just doesn't bounce back the way it used to. What once took hours to process now felt like it stayed with me for days. Fruit juices and sugary drinks. Here's another healthy item that turned out to be harmful. I used to drink orange juice every morning thinking I was giving my body a dose of vitamins. But fruit juice, even the 100% kind, is loaded with sugar and almost no fiber. Without the fiber that comes from eating whole fruit, the sugar from juice floods the body, feeds bad gut bacteria, and causes insulin spikes. It's also acidic, which didn't help my already sensitive stomach lining. Once I cut out juices and started eating whole fruits instead, apples, berries, pears, I felt fuller, more energized, and my gut stopped feeling irritated. Packaged. Snacks and low-fat foods. I used to keep snacks like crackers, granola bars, and low-fat cookies around the house. They seemed like safer options. After all, they weren't chips or candy, but many of these processed snacks are packed with preservatives, gums, emulsifiers, and hidden sugars. All of these additives can damage the gut lining and alter gut bacteria. Low-fat foods often replace fat with sugar and chemicals to improve taste, and the gut suffers for it. Once I started reading the ingredient labels more carefully, I realized most of what I was eating wasn't food at all. It was a mix of lab-made ingredients my gut couldn't handle. What I learned: the foods that were secretly wrecking my digestion weren't rare or exotic. They were in my kitchen, in my fridge, on my plate. They were part of my routine for decades, and they were slowly making me feel heavy, tired, and unwell. But the good news? Once I knew what to look for, I could change things. And that's what the next section is all about. The real signs my gut was crying for help. For years, I lived with discomfort and called it normal. I thought it was normal to feel bloated after meals, normal to skip a bowel movement now and then, normal to get gassy in the middle of the day or feel foggy after lunch. Everyone around me seemed to experience these things too, especially other seniors, so I figured it was just a part of getting older. But now I know better. These weren't quirks of aging. These were warnings, real physical signs that my gut was out of balance and begging for help. Let me walk you through the symptoms I experienced. Some were subtle, others were loud and persistent, but all of them, in hindsight, were signals I shouldn't have ignored. Bloating, that wouldn't quit. This was one of the earliest signs. After meals, even small ones, I'd feel like I'd swallowed a balloon. My stomach would puff up, and my waistband would feel tight. Sometimes I'd burp excessively or feel this uncomfortable pressure just sitting in my gut. I blamed it on eating too fast or maybe getting older, but the truth is, bloating is often a sign of poor digestion or an imbalance in gut bacteria. It means something's not getting broken down properly. After I cut out certain foods, like dairy and processed carbs, the bloating reduced drastically. And that's when I realized how long I had been ignoring the message my body was sending. Irregular bowel movements constipation was something I had quietly tolerated. Going every other day or even every third day became my new norm. And when I did go, it was either hard, strained, or incomplete. Sometimes I swung the other way and had diarrhea without warning, especially after eating certain meals. It was frustrating, unpredictable, and frankly, embarrassing at times, as it turns out, the gut is extremely sensitive to the food we eat and to how well our microbiome is functioning. A healthy gut should keep your digestion smooth, regular, and predictable. I had none of that, and I had gotten used to the chaos. Brain fog and fatigue. There were days I felt like I was walking through a fog, forgetting names, misplacing things, struggling to focus on simple tasks. I felt tired even after sleeping 8 hours. There was this persistent heaviness in my head. At first, I thought it was just a part of aging, but the more I learned about the gut-brain connection, the more things started to click. The gut actually produces a large amount of serotonin and communicates directly with the brain via the vagus nerve. When your gut is inflamed or imbalanced, it affects your cognitive clarity and emotional stability. That fog I felt, it was connected to what was happening in my belly. Frequent heartburn and indigestion after dinner. I'd sometimes feel a burning in my chest or a sour taste in my throat. Antacids became a regular part of my evening routine. But here's the kicker. Recurring heartburn isn't just about acid. It's often a sign that your digestion isn't working properly. It might be because of low stomach acid, not too much, or it could be due to foods that are triggering inflammation and pressure in your digestive tract. Once I cut out certain problem foods, especially fried foods and acidic beverages, the heartburn nearly vanished, without medication. Excessive. Gas and cramping passing gas is normal, of course, but I was constantly gassy, to the point that I felt self-conscious. My stomach would cramp, twist, and rumble loudly at the most inconvenient times. These were signs that something I was eating was fermenting in my gut, likely because the bacteria in there were off balance. When bad bacteria take over, they create more gas, more discomfort, and more inflammation. The moment I began nourishing the good bacteria with probiotics and fiber-rich foods, those symptoms began to ease. Skin breakouts and rashes. This one surprised me. I started getting dry patches on my arms and even a recurring redness on my cheeks. I didn't connect it to digestion until I read about how the gut affects the skin. If your gut is inflamed or your body is reacting to food sensitivities, it often shows up through the skin, your body's largest organ. Those rashes were my gut's way of crying out. And when I cleaned up my diet, my skin began to look healthier and more hydrated. Mood swings and anxiety. I used to think I was just becoming more irritable with age. Little things would bother me more than they used to. I had days where I felt unusually down, even though nothing was wrong. I never would have guessed my gut was the cause. But it turns out, over 90% of serotonin, the feel-good hormone, is made in the gut. If the gut is imbalanced, it can directly affect your emotional well-being. It can create anxiety, irritability, and even mild depression. It was humbling to realize that my emotions weren't just about my mindset, they were being shaped by what I was eating. Weakened immunity. Before I changed my diet, I used to catch colds easily. My cuts took longer to heal. I had seasonal allergies that lingered. What I didn't know is that over 70% of our immune system lives in the gut. When our gut is under attack from bad foods or bad bacteria, our immune system becomes compromised. Once I cleaned up my eating and improved my gut health, I noticed that I didn't get sick as often. My energy levels went up. My body felt more resilient. It's amazing how much power lives in the gut. A message I wish I had heard sooner. If someone had told me 10 years ago to listen to these little signs, the bloating, the mood changes, the brain fog, maybe I would have made changes sooner. But back then, no one talked about gut health like they do now. It wasn't a popular topic, especially among seniors. So I'm telling you now, as someone who's been through it, listen to your gut, literally. It speaks in symptoms, in feelings, in patterns. It whispers before it screams. And the good news? It's never too late to turn things around. In the next section, I'll show you what I stopped eating and how my body thanked me. What I stopped eating and how my body thanked me. The turning point for me didn't come with a doctor's warning or a dramatic diagnosis. It came on a quiet morning while I sat with a cup of tea and a belly that felt like a balloon. Tight, sore, and gurgling with discomfort. I'd just had a healthy breakfast, toast with butter, some yogurt, and a glass of orange juice. And yet within 30 minutes, I felt worse than I had the night before. That morning, I realized something had to change. So I took a hard look at what I was putting into my body. Not just the big indulgences, but the everyday foods, the things I had eaten for decades, without question. One by one, I began cutting out the culprits. And as I did, something incredible happened. My body thanked me, loud and clear. Here's what I removed and what changed the moment I did. Dairy products, especially milk and cheese. Letting go of dairy felt like giving up a childhood comfort. I had grown up drinking milk, pouring it into my cereal, and enjoying creamy cheeses with crackers. But the older I got, the more I noticed something. After dairy, I felt sluggish and bloated. I didn't realize that lactose intolerance becomes more common with age. As our bodies produce less lactase, the enzyme needed to digest milk, dairy starts to ferment in the gut, creating gas, bloating, and even diarrhea. So I gave it up. At first, just milk, then cheese, then yogurt. I switched to almond and oat milk and started using plant-based cheeses sparingly. Within a week, my digestion felt smoother. The gurgling stopped, the bloating eased. It was like my stomach had taken a deep breath of relief. Refined carbohydrates, white bread, pasta, and pastries. Bread. It was the hardest goodbye. Toast in the morning, a sandwich for lunch, a dinner roll in the evening. But as comforting as it was, I realized it left me feeling tired, bloated, and heavy. It turned out that refined carbs break down quickly into sugar, which spikes insulin, feeds bad gut bacteria, and leaves your digestion sluggish. I made a decision. If it didn't have whole grains, I didn't need it. So I switched to sprouted grain breads, quinoa, brown rice, and oats. Not only did my gut begin to move regularly again, but I had more energy. The kind of steady, reliable energy I hadn't felt in years. Fried and greasy foods, fried chicken used to be my guilty pleasure. I'd indulge once a week thinking that moderation made it harmless. But the more I paid attention, the more I realized that after eating fried foods, I'd feel lethargic, bloated, and even a bit nauseous. The oils used in fried food, especially at restaurants, are often cheap, inflammatory, and full of trans fats. They slow digestion, increase inflammation, and can even harm the gut lining. Once I stopped eating them, I felt cleaner, inside and out. My heartburn disappeared. My stool became more regular. My stomach stopped feeling like it was doing backflips. Artificial sweeteners and sugar-free products. I used to drink diet soda religiously. I thought I was being smart. No calories, no sugar. But every time I had one, I noticed I'd get bloated or crampy afterward. That's because artificial sweeteners like aspartame and sucralose disrupt the balance of gut bacteria. They trick the body into thinking it's getting sugar, but instead create confusion and inflammation in the gut. When I gave them up, cold turkey, it was tough. But within days, the fog in my brain started to lift. I stopped craving sweets constantly, and my gut felt more peaceful. Packaged diet foods, if it came in a box and claimed to be low-fat, low-carb, or sugar-free, I used to buy it. But then I started reading labels. These foods were loaded with preservatives, gums, emulsifiers, and mystery chemicals. These ingredients might help food sit on a shelf longer, but they don't sit well in your gut. In fact, many of them have been shown to harm the intestinal lining and feed bad bacteria. I replaced them with simple whole foods, fresh fruits, nuts, vegetables with hummus, homemade soups. It took more prep, sure, but I felt human again. Energized, focused, comfortable in my own body. Sodas and fruit juices. Even before I gave up artificial sweeteners, I still occasionally drank fruit juice. Orange juice in the morning, cranberry in the evening. I thought I was doing something good for my body, but I wasn't. Fruit juice is stripped of fiber and full of sugar, even the 100% natural kinds. Without fiber, your blood sugar spikes, and the sugar becomes fuel for bad gut bacteria. I cut juice out completely and began eating whole fruit instead. The results? My cravings disappeared. My digestion improved. I even started sleeping better. Cured meats and processed meats I used to love deli sandwiches, salami, turkey, ham, you name it. But the preservatives, nitrates, and additives in processed meats disrupt gut health and increase the risk of inflammation, not just in the gut, but throughout the body. After I swapped out lunch meats for lean, home-cooked chicken or plant-based proteins, the difference was night and day. I felt less bloated, my joints hurt less, and I stopped having those mysterious stomach cramps that used to strike mid-afternoon. What happened next was unexpected. When I made these changes, I expected some digestive improvement, but what I got was more than that. My energy returned. I didn't need 2 naps a day just to function. My mood stabilized. I wasn't snapping at people or feeling gloomy for no reason. My sleep deepened. I stopped tossing and turning and began waking up refreshed. My skin cleared up. Even the red patches on my arms and cheeks began to fade. My mind got sharper. The fog that had dulled my thinking lifted, and I could focus again. It wasn't magic. It was gut health, and all it took was removing the foods that were quietly poisoning my system. I didn't need a fancy cleanse. I didn't need supplements with names I couldn't pronounce. I just needed to listen to what my body was saying and make changes accordingly. The biggest lesson I learned: you don't have to wait for your gut to act up before you take action. Most of us wait until the symptoms are screaming. But if I had started earlier, just listening to the little discomforts, I could have spared myself years of suffering. Now, I live by a simple rule. If a food makes me feel worse instead of better, it's not worth it. And the best part is, the moment I gave my gut the respect it deserved, it gave me my health back. What I eat now to keep my gut happy and healthy. After years of stomach pain, fatigue, and a sense that something just wasn't right inside me, I made a big shift, not just in what I stopped eating, but in what I started eating. Because let's face it, once you clear out the harmful stuff, the real magic happens when you begin nourishing your body with the good stuff. And let me tell you, my gut has never been happier. This is what I eat now at my age to keep my digestion smooth, my mind sharp, and my energy steady. I call it my gut-happy way of life. I didn't get here overnight, and I'm no saint, but these changes made all the difference. Fiber-rich foods are my best friends. I never realized how fiber-starved my diet was until I actually started tracking it. Most seniors, including myself, don't get enough. But once I began eating fiber-rich foods daily, I noticed a dramatic difference. Less bloating, more regularity, and even clearer skin. Now, I make sure every meal includes at least 1 fiber. Superstar. Here are my favorites. Oats. I eat them nearly every morning, either cooked or soaked overnight. Chia seeds and flax seeds. Just a spoonful in my smoothie or sprinkled on yogurt gives me a fiber and omega-3 boost. Lentils and beans. I make soups with them at least 3 times a week. Berries, blueberries, raspberries, blackberries. Not only are they full of antioxidants, but they're packed with fiber and are naturally sweet. Since increasing my fiber, I've felt lighter, more energized, and less prone to digestive discomfort. It was like clearing traffic on a backed-up highway. Fermented foods for a flourishing gut. I used to ignore foods like sauerkraut, kimchi, and kefir, either because I didn't like the taste or didn't understand the benefits. But once I learned how fermented foods support the good bacteria in our gut, I gave them another try. And wow, my body responded in the best way. Today, I include at least 1 fermented food in my diet daily. Plain kefir, like drinkable yogurt, helps with digestion and reduces bloating. Sauerkraut adds a crunchy, zesty twist to meals and boosts probiotic intake. Kimchi is spicy and a little funky, but a small spoonful goes a long way. Greek yogurt, unsweetened and with live cultures, is my go-to dessert. It took time to adjust to the tangy flavors, but my gut rewarded me with more calm, less cramping, and better bowel movements. Hydration, But not just water, yes, drinking. Water is essential. But I learned that hydration isn't only about the amount of water I drink, it's also about what's in that water and when I drink it. Now, here's what I do. I start each morning with a glass of warm water and lemon to wake up my digestion. Throughout the day, I sip on herbal teas. Peppermint and ginger are my go-tos for digestion. I also drink electrolyte water once in a while, without added sugar, to support hydration on hot days or after a walk. By staying consistently hydrated, not just gulping water at meals, I've noticed less constipation and fewer headaches, both of which plagued me in the past. Whole foods over-packaged every time I used to rely on convenience. Microwave meals, packaged snacks, protein bars. But once I started eating foods in their most natural forms, whole grains, fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, my body thanked me in more ways than one. Here's what a typical day looks like for me now: breakfast, oats with berries, chia seeds, and a drizzle of honey. Lunch, a grain bowl with quinoa, roasted vegetables, chickpeas, and olive oil. Snack, a small handful of almonds and a piece of dark chocolate. Dinner, grilled salmon, steamed broccoli, and a side of lentils. Dessert, Greek yogurt with cinnamon and walnuts. Everything is simple, colorful, and filled with ingredients I can pronounce. My cravings for salty chips and sugary treats, they disappeared once my body got the nutrients it actually needed. Mindful eating has changed everything. I never used to think about how I was eating. I'd rush through meals, eat while watching TV, or skip breakfast entirely. But now, I make meals a moment of care and mindfulness. Here's what I practice. Chew slowly. It helps digestion and lets me notice when I'm full. No distractions. I eat without screens or scrolling. Smaller portions. I eat just enough, and if I'm still hungry later, I eat again. Gratitude. I say a silent thank you before each meal, not out of habit, but because I genuinely feel grateful for the nourishment. This approach has brought calm to my meals, peace to my digestion, and a renewed relationship with food. Eating is no longer stressful, it's healing. Healthy fats that soothe. Instead of stress in my younger days, I avoided fats because I thought they were bad. Now I understand that the right fats are healing, especially for the gut. Here's what I use now. Olive oil, drizzled over salads, soups, or even vegetables. Avocados, creamy, rich in fiber, and full of healthy fats. Nuts and seeds, a little goes a long way, and they're incredibly satisfying. Fatty fish, like salmon or sardines, once or twice a week. These foods keep inflammation down, support the gut lining, and help me feel full and nourished, not sluggish. My gut-healthy lifestyle, a daily commitment. Today, my gut health is not perfect, but it's balanced. I no longer live in fear of discomfort or unpredictable digestion. Instead, I've found a rhythm that works for my body. And most importantly, I've learned to listen to my gut. It speaks in whispers. Discomfort, fatigue, cravings, and now I know how to answer it. To sum it up, my gut-happy diet includes high-fiber foods, fermented and probiotic-rich items, simple, unprocessed meals, healthy fats and hydration, mindful, relaxed eating habits I didn't get here overnight. But if there's one thing I can promise you, it's that your gut will always reflect the care you give it. So if you're watching this and wondering where to begin, start with just one small change. Swap the white bread for a whole grain. Try kefir instead of flavored yogurt. Replace a sugary snack with fruit and nuts. Listen to your body. It's smarter than you think. And remember, a happy gut isn't just about digestion. It's about living fully, feeling light, and aging with joy and strength.